In a double blow to the United States, President Donald Trump, two of his former aides were found guilty of financial frauds while one of them testified against him in court. Serving the first blow, a court found his former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, guilty of several counts of financial fraud, including tax evasion. Manafort was also found guilty of failing to disclose his foreign bank accounts details. The political consultant headed Trump's presidential campaign team from June to August 2016. Meanwhile, Trump tried to distance himself from the Manafort case and said that it did not involve him, while reiterating that Manafort was a victim of witch hunt. The US president said that the verdict does not prove the alleged Russian meddling in the 2016 US polls.
You know, it's a very sad thing that happens. This has nothing to do with Russian collusion. This started as Russian collusion. This has absolutely nothing to do. This is a witch hunt and it's a disgrace. But this has nothing to do what they started out looking for Russians involved in our campaign. There were none. I feel very badly for Paul Manafort. Again, he worked for Bob Dole, he worked for Ronald Reagan.
Within minutes of Manafort's conviction, Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, sealed a deal with the prosecutors and pleaded guilty to campaign finance violations, including payoff to women, bank and tax fraud. Cohen testified that Trump directed him to commit a crime by arranging payments ahead of the 2016 presidential elections to silence two women who claimed to have had affairs with Trump. The prosecutors began investigating Cohen after receiving a tip-off from the special counsel, Robert Mueller, who is also heading the Russia collusion probe. Meanwhile, prosecutors have said that the Cohen will pay a heavy price for his crime.
These are very serious charges and reflect a pattern of lies and dishonesty over an extended period of time. They are significant in their own rights. They are particularly significant when done by a lawyer who, through training and tradition, understands what it means to be a lawyer, to engage in honest and fair dealing and adherence to the law. Mr. Cohen disregarded that training, disregarded that tradition, and decided that he was above the law, and for that he was going to pay a very, very serious price.
Today's reporting about Michael Cohen with great interest. He appears to be pleading guilty to very serious charges. However, we have no insight into any agreements he and his legal team have allegedly reached with the prosecutors in New York. What we can say is that we recently re-engaged Mr. Cohen and his team following press reports that suggested he had advanced knowledge of a June 16th meeting between campaign officials and a Russian lawyer at the Trump Tower. Mr. Cohen had testified before the committee that he was not aware of any meeting prior to this disclosure in the press last summer. As such, the committee inquired of Mr. Cohen's legal team as to whether Mr. Cohen stood by his testimony. They responded that he did stand by his testimony. We hope that today's developments in Mr. Cohen's plea agreement will not preclude him from an appearance before our committee as needed for ongoing investigation.
Ray Locker, National Security Editor from the United States of America, live from Washington. Thank you, Ray, for joining us. My question to you is, how serious is this issue for President Donald Trump, the Manafort and the Cohen revelations?
It was a stunning development yesterday that both of these things happened at the same time. Manafort being found guilty, Cohen pleading guilty. It's a major, major problem for the President of the United States.
Or is it a possibility that there can be a motion for impeachment of the President of the United States on these two issues, or it is just in the realm of speculation?
Oh, it's extremely possible. Probably not with the current makeup of this Congress, but we have elections coming up in early November. If the Democrats win control of the House of Representatives, which is where an impeachment proceeding would come from, it's certainly possible. And I think you're going to see greater momentum for that happening.
Do you think, Mr. Locker, that it will also affect the decision-making capacity of the current president with these revelations, affect the presidency in terms of day-to-day functioning?
Oh, I think so. I think it already has. Look at all the tweets that have come out in the last few months about the Russian investigation. It's obviously on his mind. And while there have been decisions coming out from a variety of government agencies, which is what they do, haven't been a lot of new initiatives coming from the White House. So it's obviously having an effect.
But, if we have to do a comparative analysis when Clinton was in power and when this scandal broke, a lot of people said that was a white lie. Is it equal in comparison or far more graver and far more serious?
I think this involved other people who were doing things, transferring money, creating shell companies, doing payoffs to people, far greater than what happened in the Clinton impeachment scandal. I mean, look, President Clinton lied to prosecutors. He misled them. He had to reach a settlement for it. He was actually impeached. He wasn't convicted, but impeached. He paid a price for it. And I think, it's very plausible that this president will end up paying some kind of price for it as well.
And lastly, it's closer to what happened during when the Watergate scandal broke. It's something like that. Closer to that?
Yeah, it is. And, here's the thing. The president mentioned yesterday this had nothing to do with Russian collusion. Many of the problems for President Richard Nixon had nothing to do with the Watergate break-in, which was a very minor event in the whole scheme of what happened in the Nixon presidency. And, some of the things that Nixon did touched on Indian politics at the time that people didn't know about. So when you start an investigation looking at one thing, it inevitably goes somewhere else because prosecutors, investigators find other problems, and that's what's happening here. And President Nixon was going to go be impeached for a variety of things that had nothing to do with the Watergate break-in, and that could be what happens to President Trump as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us from Washington. So this was our focus on what's happening in Washington. These two developments which can affect the presidency of Donald Trump, the Cohen revelations and the conviction of Manafort.